The first time I understood that Sébastien Renaud would burn a man to the ground for me. I was sitting on the cold tile of my own kitchen floor in the north end of Halifax, tasting blood, dialing a number I'd promised myself I would never call. But I'm getting ahead of the whole thing. Let me back up, because the part that matters isn't the blood. It's the 4 years before it. I'd worked the front office at Renaud Maritime for 4 winters by then. 4 winters of scraping ice off my windshield in the dark, of nor'easters that shut the bridges, of the harbor going that flat pewter color it gets in February. Renaud Maritime moved freight, containers, customs paperwork, cold storage down by the piers. That was the part written on the invoices. There was another part nobody put on paper, and I'd have had to be deaf not to hear about it. In this city, people talk. They talked about Sébastien Renaud, the way they talk about the weather rolling in off the Atlantic. Low, careful, like naming it might make it worse. Some of the money that came through those containers didn't come from freight. Some of the men who came to see him didn't look like they knew a bill of lading from a hole in the ground. I chose not to look too hard. That was my talent back then. Not looking. I had a decent salary, a walk-up on Agricola Street, with a radiator that clanked all night, and a boyfriend named Grant, and I told myself that was a whole life. I was 29 and I'd gotten very good at telling myself things. Here's what I want you to know, so you don't think I was stupid, because for a long time I let people call me that in my own head. I wasn't stupid. I noticed things. I noticed that Grant Maddox got quieter and meaner in the same breath. I noticed the way he started asking where I was, then telling me where I was, then not asking at all because he'd put a tracking thing on my phone. For safety, Cam, because I love you. I noticed the joint account he talked me into at TD, how the balance never quite matched what my paycheck should have left behind. I noticed all of it. I just filed it the way I filed the whispers about my boss, somewhere I didn't have to open the drawer. The evening it broke open, I was at my desk past 6 doing the month-end reconciliations. My phone lit up on the blotter. Where are you? No question mark. Grant didn't waste question marks on me anymore. Still at work, I typed. Told you this morning. Month end. The 3 dots came and went. You were laughing with someone. I wasn't. I'd said goodnight to Owen from the loading side, a married guy with a kid in Pee-wee hockey, who'd shown me a photo of the kid missing a tooth. That was the whole crime. But by then Grant found a man in every hallway, an affair in every hello. Camille. I looked up and Sébastien Renaud was standing in the doorway of his office in his shirt sleeves. Cuffs turned back. Tie already gone. He had a way of filling a doorway without seeming to try. Dark eyes that took inventory of a room in about a second and a half. He'd never once in 4 years crossed a single line with me. Never a word out of place. Never a hand where it shouldn't be. But I'd felt him notice me the way you feel the sun move across your desk. A warmth you could set your day by and never once name out loud. It's gone 6, he said. The reconciliations will keep till morning. Go home, Ms. Aubin. That was always how it was between us. Ms. Aubin. Mr. Renaud. A cool, correct little dance we'd kept up for 4 years. I'm nearly finished, I said, which was a lie, because home was the last place my body wanted to go. His eyes dropped to my phone, face down now under my palm buzzing, then back to my face. Something in his jaw moved. If you ever need anything, he said, quiet, you have my personal number, day or night, you understand? I'd had that number saved for 2 years and never used it. Thank you, Mr. Renaud. I'm all right. He didn't believe me. I could see he didn't. But he stepped back and let me keep my lie, the way he always let me keep my boundaries. And that, I'd think later, was the whole difference between him and the man waiting for me on Agricola Street. The apartment smelled like cold takeout, and the cigarettes Grant kept swearing he'd quit. He was on the couch with a rye and Coke, and 4 empties lined up on the sill like something standing guard. He was always worse when he drank. I knew that the way you know which stair creaks. You're late, he said, not looking up. Month end, I told you. Mr. Renaud made me leave at 6. His head came up slow. Renaud made you, asked me. He said could wait. He stood, and I did the arithmetic I'd gotten too good at. The number of steps to the door, whether my coat was in reach. How thoughtful of him, Grant said soft, which was the worst way he had of saying anything. Always so worried about you. I've seen how he looks at you, Camille. He's my boss. That's all. That's all. He laughed, ugly. You think I'm blind? You think I don't see what's going on? I said nothing was going on, and God help me. It was true and it wasn't. Nothing had ever happened. But the thing between Sebastian and me had been humming under 4 years of Miss Aubin and Mr. Renaud, and I think Grant smelled it on me the way a dog smells fear. He crossed the room in 2 strides, and his hand closed around my wrist, hard enough that I felt the small bones grind. "Grant, you're hurting me." He wasn't hearing me anymore. His grip clamped my other wrist too. "You smiled at that hockey guy. You stay late with Renaa." "Who else, Camille?" "Who else? Nobody." It came out half a sob. "Grant, please." And then his hand came off my wrist and across my face, and my head snapped sideways, and the whole kitchen went white and ringing. He'd grabbed me before. Bruise me, never that. We stood there breathing at each other, and I watched it hit him. Watched the horror come up in his eyes as the thing he'd done arrived in the room with us. "Cam!" "God, I didn't." He reached for me. "Don't." My hand was over my cheek. It was already hot and enormous under my palm. "Don't touch me." "Get out." "I love you so much it makes me. Get out." And there must have been something new in my voice, because he grabbed his coat and his keys. At the door he turned. "This isn't over. You're upset. We'll talk tomorrow. We're good together, Cam. You know we are." The door slammed. And I slid down the cupboards to the floor with the tile freezing through my slacks and my whole body going to pieces. And my phone was already in my hand before I decided to reach for it. Not 911. Not my sister out in Moncton. Not my mother, who'd told me about Grant 3 years ago and been right, and would never once say she'd been right, which is its own kind of unbearable. I scrolled with shaking fingers to the number I'd saved 2 years back and never dared touch. It rang once. Camille. He was awake and alert instantly, no hello, no fog of sleep. Just my name, and the immediate hard edge of what's wrong underneath it, and just hearing him say it broke something loose in my chest, and the words came out small and cracked. "Can you please come get me?" There was a half-second of silence I'll remember the rest of my life. And when he spoke again, his voice had changed completely. Gone low and flat and absolutely lethal, a voice I'd never heard from the man who said goodnight to me in the doorway. "Where are you?" "Home. My apartment. But he might come back. Lock the everything. Chain, deadbolt, all of it." I could hear movement, keys, the beep of an alarm panel. "Camille, are you hurt?" He hit me. "I'm okay, He grabbed my wrists, another silence, worse than the first. "Pack a bag," he said. "Enough for a few days. You're not spending tonight in that place. Mr. Renaud can wait until morning." And I swear I heard the ghost of something almost warm move under all that steel. "Right now I'm Sebastian and you're Camille and you called me. So pack a bag, Songbird. I'm 9 minutes out. Stay on the line." I don't remember most of packing. I remember throwing pajamas and my chargers, and for some reason, my passport and my one photograph of my grandma to my work tote, my hands shaking so hard I dropped everything twice. 7 minutes. 6, 5. When the knock came, I nearly screamed. "It's me," he said through the door. He was in jeans and a black sweater with his hair pushed back like he'd run his hands through it once and left. And behind him in the hall stood a broad, quiet man he introduced later as Leo, watching the stairwell like he expected it to do something. Sebastian's eyes went to my wrists first, then to my face, to the mark blooming across my cheekbone. Something moved across his expression, dark and total, there and gone so fast I might have imagined it. He didn't touch me. He took my bag out of my hands very gently, like the bag was the thing that might break. "Let's go," he said. Because I had nowhere else and no one else, I followed him down 3 flights and out into the snow. His car was a black SUV that smelled of leather, and the cologne I knew from him passing my desk 1,000 times. Leo drove. Sebastian sat in the back with me and kept a careful foot of space between us the whole way over the bridge, even as his eyes catalogued every mark on my skin. "Where are we going?" My voice sounded like a kid's. "My place in the South End. It's secure. You'll have your own suite, your own door that locks. He won't get near you." I should have argued for a hotel, somewhere that didn't smudge the line between the man who signed my paycheck and this. But the thought of a hotel room, of lying alone flinching at the ice machine down the hall, closed my throat. "Okay," I whispered. "Thank you." His jaw ticked. "We should photograph the injuries. For a police report." "I'm not filing a report, Camille." His hand moved toward mine on the seat and stopped, settled on the leather between us instead. "He assaulted you. That doesn't disappear because you decide not to see it. I know what he did." Anger flickered up through the fear, and it steadied me, a little. "I also know how it goes. He'll say I'm lying. His family's got money, lawyers. I'll be the crazy girlfriend making things up. You're not lying, he said. And you're not crazy. You're a woman who was hurt by someone who was supposed to keep her safe. The rest of it is just noise, Songbird. But it wasn't simple, and I told him so, because the lease had both our names on it, and so did the TD account, and so did the loan for the Corolla he'd given me last year that was still in his name. Leaving Grant meant unpicking myself out of 1,000 small knots he'd tied when I wasn't watching. And here's the thing I'd already half suspected, sitting on that kitchen floor. Knots he'd tied very much on purpose. His place took up the top 2 floors of a stone building, overlooking Point Pleasant Park, the black water of the harbor beyond it. Marble, clean lines, a housekeeper named Mrs. Doucet, who appeared with tea and no questions. He put me in a guest suite bigger than my whole walk-up, and set my bag at the foot of the bed. Leo stays at the main door tonight, he said. My room's at the far end. You're safe here, Camille. Let me call my doctor. Just to be sure nothing's cracked. Please. The please undid me. Sebastian Renaud, who made grown men careful, asking instead of telling. The doctor was a calm woman named Dr. Sandu, who came within the hour, examined my wrists and cheek with cool, careful hands, and pressed her mouth flat when she saw the full spread of the bruising. No fractures, she said. Soft tissue. Ice tonight, then heat. She left something for the pain and something for sleep. I said I didn't want to be knocked out. She said gently that my body wasn't going to let me rest on its own with that much adrenaline in it, and she was right. Later I found Sebastian at the tall windows with a glass of something amber, his feet bare, looking out at his city. I told him I didn't know how to thank him. Don't thank me, he said without turning. This is what a decent person does. The fact that it feels like a favor to you tells me exactly how low Grant set the bar. I flinched at the name. He noticed, of course he noticed, and said he was sorry. That was harsh. I said it was honest. And I stood there in borrowed quiet with the lights of Dartmouth smeared across the harbor, and I said the thing I'd been circling for years. I keep asking how I didn't see it. The signs were all there. He was quiet a moment. We see what we want to see in the people we've decided to love. That's not weakness. That's just being a person. I could have argued. I didn't. I took the pill Dr. Sandu left, and I slept in a bed too big for me, and my last thought was the sound of his voice going flat on the phone. Where are you? Like the answer was a thing he intended to solve. I woke to gray Halifax daylight, and everything crashed back at once. My phone had 17 missed calls from Grant, and a wall of texts that walked from "I'm so sorry, Cam" to "You think Renaud can protect you" to "I know where you are." My hands shook reading them, but underneath the fear was that harder, colder thing again, and it was growing. Because how dare he? How dare he put marks on me and then act like I was the one who'd betrayed him? Sebastian brought coffee himself, a whole tray of it, apologizing that Mrs. Doucet had insisted on options. He was going to the office for a few hours. Leo would be here. I was safe. He told me where he'd be like it mattered that I knew. And here is where I did the thing that I think saved me. The thing I want any woman watching to hear. While he was gone, I didn't just sit and cry. I opened the banking app. I'd been quietly suspicious for months. That's the part I never told anyone, not even my sister. That I wasn't blindsided so much as finally letting myself read what I already knew. The joint checking showed $81. My last paycheck had gone in a week before. I scrolled. Cash advances. E-transfers to names I didn't know. I opened my credit report through Equifax, something I hadn't checked in over a year, and the floor dropped out from under me. 3 credit cards I'd never applied for. A line of credit at a bank I'd never set foot in. A personal loan for $11,000, and another for 860 days past due. Grant had my SIN, my date of birth, my everything. He'd slept beside me and photographed my documents in the dark. $20-some thousand of debt in my name, built up over months, while I worked 60-hour weeks and trusted him with the bills, because it was easier. I'd thought the worst he'd done was hit me. I'd been wrong. The hitting was the loud part. The quiet part was the one that had been strategizing to trap me the whole time. The joint account, the car in his name, cutting me off from my friends, one string at a time, until my whole world was work and him. I called Sebastian. He picked up on the first ring. "He robbed me," I said, and my voice was shaking, but it wasn't fear anymore. "Grant, he's been opening accounts in my name. Loans. I just pulled my Equifax. There's $25,000 in debt I never touched. Silence, then, in that lethal voice. I'm coming back. Don't do anything till I'm there. When he walked in 20 minutes later, I wasn't crying. I was ready. He looked at the printouts I'd spread across his island, at the fraudulent applications, and his face went colder with every page. We're calling the police, he said. This is identity theft and fraud. It's prosecutable. It's my word against his. He'll say I signed for all of it. Did you? No. Then it's forgery, and forgery leaves a trail. We'll get you a lawyer. Contest every dollar. Freeze your credit. We take him apart, Camille. Legally, completely, so it holds up. The viciousness in it should have scared me. It felt like being handed a floor to stand on, but I heard myself say something I hadn't planned. I want to do it myself. I want to be the one who gathers the evidence, who files it, who watches him answer for it. Can you help me do that? Not do it for me. Something in his face eased, the smallest amount. Yes, we help you fight back, and this time you're not doing it alone. For the first time since his hand had found my face, I felt something like the beginning of hope. The Halifax Regional Police Station smelled like burnt coffee and floor cleaner. I sat across from a detective named Sarah Cormier, Acadian, patient, glasses, with steel rims, and I laid it out, the assault and the fraud, in order the way I'd already started organizing it in a notebook I'd been keeping since long before that night. Dr. Sandhu's photos were time-stamped and clinical. Detective Cormier warned me fraud cases were slow, that they'd have to subpoena bank records, that Grant would say I authorized everything. I know, I said, but I didn't, and I'll testify to that. She told me to look into an emergency protection order. I already had, with the lawyer Sebastian had put me in touch with, a sharp woman who'd walked me through the Nova Scotia process the same afternoon. Grant was ordered to stay 500 meters from me, my workplace, and Sebastian's building. A piece of paper wouldn't stop him if he decided it wouldn't, but it was something on the record. Sebastian waited for me in the lobby in a charcoal suit that made 2 constables stand a little straighter when he moved. On the drive back, he asked if I'd eaten, and when I couldn't remember, he made a low disapproving sound and stopped at a quiet place downtown, the kind where the waiters glide and the tables are far apart. You've lost weight this week, he said. Turns out finding out your boyfriend committed identity theft kills the appetite. Ex-boyfriend, right. The word still sat wrong in my mouth. You're allowed to grieve this, he said, and his hand crossed the table and stopped just short of mine. Even if it was a lie, your feelings were real. The loss is real, Songbird. I told him I didn't know what I was grieving, the relationship I thought I had, or my own blindness. He said I wasn't blind, I was loyal, and loyalty wasn't the flaw. The flaw was in the man who'd used it. I told him about going back to the apartment with Leo, how Grant had been there first. My mother's quilt shredded, my books torn to the spine, my grandmother's teacups, the ones I'd left behind, swept off the shelf and ground into the floor. Holes punched in the drywall. It looked like a storm had come through the place. Sebastian's hands went still and flat on the tablecloth. Did Leo photograph it? All of it. My lawyer says it helps the protection order, shows his state of mind. I laughed, bitter, as if the bruises weren't enough. I'm sorry you had to see that. I'm not, I said, and I meant it, and I let him see the anger I'd been banking like coals. I'm glad I saw it. Now I know exactly who he is. Not the charming guy who used to make me laugh. The one who'd rather smash a thing than let it belong to someone else. Something flickered in his eyes. Approval, maybe. Or recognition of the steel he'd apparently always suspected was under all my careful courtesy. It was on the way out, his hand a warm and correct pressure at the small of my back, that I caught the woman watching us from a corner table. 50, expensive coat, eyes like a cash register. Who was that? I asked outside, snow ticking against my collar. Bridget Gallagher, Sebastian said, easy, too easy. She runs the numbers for a family that operates out of Spryfield. A family. As in yes. He opened my door. Don't worry about Bridget. She's not a threat to you. But you leaving Grant, moving into my building, in this city that's information. And information about me has a price. I did worry, though, because I was starting to understand the water Sebastian swam in. A world where business was a kind of quiet war, conducted in good coats over good wine, and where my being near him could be read as a soft spot a way in. I filed that too. But this time I didn't shut the drawer. The weeks after ran together into statements and lawyers, and slowly mapping the full shape of what Grant had done. I stayed in the guest suite. Sebastien kept his distance. Breakfast at opposite ends of the island, the drive to the office, the whole careful architecture of Ms. Aubin and Mr. Renaud, except it was getting harder to hold up, because every kindness from him showed me exactly what I'd made myself go without. One night I couldn't sleep, and he saw my light and knocked, and instead of sending him off, I opened the door. We ended up on opposite ends of his big leather couch with mugs of chamomile, the harbor black beyond the glass, and he asked me to tell him one thing about myself that had nothing to do with work or with Grant. I told him I used to throw pots, ceramics, had a little wheel set up in my first apartment before Grant moved in and said it took up too much room and made a mess, and wasn't I a bit old to be playing with mud? I hadn't touched clay in 2 years. There's a room downstairs off the parking level, Sebastien said. It's storage right now. Good light in the mornings. You could set it up however you wanted. You've already done so much. This isn't charity, Camille. It's a reminder. He leaned forward, and his voice went rough. You had a whole life before him, things you loved. Don't let him keep those too. That hit somewhere Grant had left hollow, and I heard myself whisper that I wanted those parts of me back. And he said, simply, then take them back. I asked him why. Why the lawyers, the security, the room off the parking level. He could have left me in the guest suite and called it decency. He was quiet a long time. Because I've watched you for 4 years, he finally said. Watched you make yourself smaller for a man who didn't deserve 1 honest hour of you. And I said nothing, because you weren't mine to protect. But you called me. You chose to trust me. I won't waste that. Is that all it is? I asked. Responsibility? His eyes came up to mine and held, and the honesty in them made it hard to breathe. No, it's not. We didn't cross the line that night. He told me, leaning back, deliberate, putting distance back between us, that I was raw and healing, and the last thing I needed was to run from one man straight into the arms of another. That when I was ready, when I was sure, we'd talk about what this could be. It was the right answer. It was the answer that proved every quiet thing I'd believed about him for 4 years. And God, it was hard to be sensible when he was looking at me like that, so I healed. I did the unglamorous work of it. I found a therapist named Dr. Kessler who helped me understand how a person loses herself an inch at a time and doesn't notice until she's gone. I built my own case too. I wasn't going to be a woman things happened to anymore. Over 3 months I put together a binder that made the Crown's fraud investigator, a tired-eyed man named Ray Boudreau, actually whistle. Every application, every forged signature, every transfer, cross-referenced and dated. This is professional-grade work, Miss Aubin, he said, flipping pages in the Renault Maritime boardroom. You could do this for a living. The handwriting analysis came back. The signatures on these loans aren't yours. Our expert will testify to it. I'm recommending charges. Identity theft, fraud, forgery, multiple counts. This goes to the Crown within the month. I moved out of the penthouse the same week, not because of anything Sebastien did, because of what I needed to prove to myself. A 1-bedroom up in the hydrostone, bright, with a window that caught the morning and creaky floors that were mine. Sebastien argued for me to stay until it was all over, and I told him I couldn't rebuild my own legs while leaning on his, and after a long moment he said that made perfect sense, and reached up and touched my cheek, the first real, unhurried touch in all those months. I've waited 4 years, he said. I can wait while you find yourself again. Take your apartment, build your life. When you're ready, when you choose me, not the safety I represent, come back. He kissed my forehead, chaste, reverent, a promise for later, and stepped back into the careful distance we'd kept so long. Grant's case moved. The charges were laid, and he was released on conditions. Surrender his passport, weekly check-ins, 500 meters, no contact, while it worked its way to trial. He and his parents wore the same tight, humiliated look leaving provincial court. His mother wouldn't meet my eyes. That first night in the hydrostone place, alone, safe, I set up a card table by the window, and for the first time in 2 years, I got clay under my nails. Just pinch pots, wobbly, nothing you'd sell. It felt like coming home to myself. The trial ran 3 days on a gray week in November. I sat in the box and walked the Crown through it, steady, and Grant's lawyer tried to shake me into admitting I'd signed for the loans, and was lying to duck the debt. And I didn't move, because the forged signatures and the time-stamped photos, and my binder didn't leave him a crack to work in. The jury was out under 4 hours. Guilty. All counts. His mother made a small broken sound. I felt almost nothing. A quiet, enormous relief that it was over. The judge set sentencing for the new year. The Crown told me to expect real time, given the counts. I walked out into the cold sun off the harbor, freer than I'd been in years, and Sebastian was leaning against his SUV, and when he saw my face, he smiled. The real one, the one almost nobody got. It's over, I told him. No, Songbird, he said. It's just starting. The next months were coffee and clay, and the slow rebuild. Sebastian held the line at the office. Professional, correct, while somehow becoming the person I most wanted to tell everything to. We had coffee most mornings, 30 neutral minutes about books and the news, and everything except the current running under it. He promoted me to operations coordinator, and when I thanked him, he said he was only correcting an oversight, that I'd been underused for years, and it warmed me more than the double-double in my hand. In Grant's shadow, I'd forgotten what it was to be seen as capable instead of tolerated. I told him, one morning, that I wanted to take a trip. Alone, somewhere warm. That I'd never once traveled by myself. Grant always had to come, and then complained about the cost of everything the whole time. Sebastian's eyebrow went up, and then he said, "That sounds healthy," and I heard the approval in it. I booked 10 days in the Dominican, and I painted the sea, and I read 3 books without anyone reading over my shoulder. And on the last night I sat in the sand and realized I was happy. Not just unafraid. Actually happy. I texted him a photo of the sunset. His reply came fast. Beautiful, like the artist. And something in my chest unfolded, and I knew I was almost ready. I came back to wildflowers on my desk, not roses. A riot of color that looked like one of my glazes. The card said "Welcome home." That night I stood at my own bathroom mirror and took inventory. The bruises were long gone. But my face was different. More color in it. More light. I looked like myself. Maybe like the self I was always supposed to be. And I texted him. "Coffee tomorrow. There's something I want to say." "My office. 8, he wrote back. I wore a dress the blue of a winter sky instead of my usual careful office grays. He stood up from behind his desk when I came in, and his eyes went over me, and he said quiet, "Camille, you look beautiful." "I've been thinking about what you said," I told him, closing the door. "About waiting until I was ready." His shoulders went tense. And I'm ready. I spent all these months proving I can stand on my own. And I've figured out that I don't want to stand alone. Not because I can't, but because I choose not to. I choose you, Sebastian. Not my boss. Not the man who came for me that night. The man I've been falling for since long before I let myself say it. He crossed the room in a heartbeat and cupped my face in both hands. Careful, like I might still shatter, though we both knew by then I wouldn't. "Are you sure? Because I'm not Grant. Once I have you, I don't let go easy." "I don't want easy," I said. "I want real." He kissed me, and it was 4 years of held breath. Gentle then not. And when we broke apart, his forehead was against mine, and he said he'd wanted to do that for so long. And when I asked why he hadn't, he said because I deserved to be chosen. Not claimed. Because he'd needed me to come to him free and clear, not out of gratitude or fear. Because he was in love with me, and he needed me to love him back, not the safety he stood for. "I do," I said. "That's what I know now. What I feel for you is nothing like what I had with Grant. This is clear-eyed. This is choice." I asked what it would look like, us, given who he was and what moved through those containers down at the piers. His face went serious. "Honesty," he said. "No secrets about the business, even the ugly parts. Protection. Not because you're weak, because you're precious to me, and partnership. I need someone who sees me clearly and stays anyway. I can do all of it," I said, and I meant it. I wasn't naive anymore. I knew exactly what he was, and I was choosing it with my eyes open. We had months then that taught me what I'd been starved of. Sebastian secure where Grant had been ravenous. He wanted me to keep my sister close, keep my own apartment, keep my Wednesday pottery class, keep my own weather. "I fell in love with the woman you are," he told me over a stove one night. "I'm not interested in trading her in. My little pieces got good enough that a shop on Agricola took a few on consignment. I was more myself than I'd been in a decade. There were shadows, too. The nature of what he did came into the room sometimes. The night Leo interrupted dinner about a shipment gone sideways down at the Fairview container terminal, and Sebastian went cold and dangerous and businesslike, and came back an hour later and said, "This is the part I can't change, Songbird." And I said I knew, and I did, and I told him just come back safe. It was about 3 months after Grant's sentencing, 8 after our first kiss, that my phone buzzed on the nightstand at dawn with Sebastian's arm heavy across my waist, and the harbor just starting to catch light. Unknown number. Ms. Aubin, this is the Nova Scotia Sheriff's Office. Grant Maddox has escaped custody. Please contact us immediately. I sat up so fast I woke him. He read it over my shoulder and was on his phone in the same motion, calling Leo, calling people I'd never met, the whole building going quietly locked down around me. He'd been in a lower security facility. The fraud counts hadn't warranted higher, and someone had made a mistake. He won't get near you, Sebastian said, his arm around me. I swear it. But fear is corrosive, and it ate at the peace I'd built stone by stone. Every creak was Grant on the stairs. A sheriff's deputy came, a competent woman with kind eyes, and told us Grant had made threats against me and against Sebastian throughout his time inside, that they were treating this seriously. She offered me protective custody until he was found. No, I said, and I heard Dr. Kessler in my own steadiness. I spent 3 years shrinking to fit Grant. I spent a year building myself back. I'm not going to disappear now. We handle this, but on my terms, make it safer. Watch me. But I keep my job, my class, my life. He doesn't get to take those too. The deputy looked between us. Sebastian looked at me for a long moment, and then, this is the part I love him for. He didn't argue me down. He said, then we stand and fight, together. Grant stayed loose for a week while the manhunt spread across the province. Security became my shadow, Leo or one of the others always somewhere close and discreet. I went to work, I went to class, I refused to let the fear choose for me. He called 8 days after the escape. I didn't know the number, answered it at my desk out of habit. Camille, that voice. My skin crawled. I should have hung up. I found instead that my own voice came out cold and level. What do you want, Grant? What's mine, you, us? The life you stole. I didn't steal anything. You burned it down yourself because of him. His voice cracked upward. Renaud, you were mine and he took you. I left you because you hurt me, because you robbed me. Sebastian had nothing to do with your choices. I kept my eyes on Leo, already in the doorway, already listening. Turn yourself in, Grant. It's the only way this ends. It ends when you come back to me. Vicious now. I know where you work. I know you're in his bed. You think that doesn't make me insane? What makes you insane isn't my problem anymore, I said. I'm done, completely. Turn yourself in or don't, but leave me alone. I hung up and handed Leo the phone with a steady hand and a hammering heart. The call traced to a burner somewhere in the city. Grant was close. The deputy wanted to move me. Sebastian said no, not hide me, but let Grant come on our terms, in the open, with people ready. She said she couldn't authorize a civilian as bait. He said she didn't have to. He'd do it. Then he turned to me, and his face went soft. Only if you're willing, Songbird. No pressure. We can do this the careful way. I thought about all the years of being afraid. I'm willing, I said. Let's end it. It took 3 days. I was walking to the parkade after work, Leo a few steps back, when I heard my name and Grant stepped out from behind a concrete pillar, gaunt, his coat hanging off him, his eyes doing something that wasn't sane. Camille, wait, please. 5 minutes. You don't get to ask me for anything. Behind him, plainclothes officers were sliding into place. You had years of chances. You used them up when you decided stealing and hitting were things you got to do. I was sick. Jealous, sick, I couldn't think. But I'm better. We could be. There's no we, I said. There hasn't been for a long time. I don't love you, Grant. I'm not sure I ever loved you. I loved who I thought you were before I knew what you'd do. His face twisted. You're with him. You're with Renaud. His hand jerked toward his coat pocket. After everything, he's everything you never were, I said, and it was the wrong, true thing to say, because I saw it land and I saw the movement, and then everything happened very fast. Leo was on him before the weapon cleared the pocket. Officers swarmed. Grant went down screaming my name into the cold concrete, and then Sebastian's arms were around me, pulling me out of it, solid and warm and real. It's over, he said against my hair. It's finally over. And it was. Grant went back inside to a maximum security facility this time, the escape adding years onto everything else. He'll be an old man when he gets out, and I'll be long gone into a life he can never touch. That night, security stood down. I was at the tall windows again with the harbor black below and the lights of Dartmouth smeared across it, and Sebastian came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. How do you feel? He asked low. Free, I said. and meant every letter of it. Not just free of Grant. Free of the fear, the doubt, the little voice that used to ask if I'd chosen wrong. "And what did you choose?" he said. Though he knew and wanted to hear it anyway, I turned in his arms. "You. Every day. For the rest of it, if you'll have me." His smile came slow. "Is that a proposal, Ms. Aubin? Maybe. If you're interested." He kissed me, and then he stepped back and reached into his pocket and came out with a small box, and when he opened it I made a sound I didn't plan. A sapphire, ringed in small diamonds, the exact blue of the dress I'd worn the morning I finally chose him. He went down on one knee right there in his own living room, with the whole harbor glittering under us. "Camille Aubin," he said, "I have loved you for 4 years, watched you, waited for you. You are the bravest, most stubborn, most beautiful woman I have ever known, and I would like to spend the rest of my life proving you chose well. Will you marry me?" The tears came, and for once they were the good kind. "Yes," I said. "Yes, Sebastian." 1,000 times. He slid the ring on and pulled me down laughing and crying into his arms, and much later, with the ring catching the moonlight and my grandmother's one surviving teacup on his shelf where I'd put it, I traced a shape on his chest and told him thank you. For waiting, for seeing me, for letting me find myself before he ever let me find us. "Thank you for calling me that night," he said into my hair. "For trusting me when you were terrified. For choosing to heal instead of hide. For choosing me when you could have just chosen safe. You are my safe," I told him. "But you're also everything else. My partner, my future." Outside, the harbor kept its slow black rhythm, the way it had every winter I'd scrape my windshield in the dark and called it a whole life. And inside, warm and chosen, I understood at last what I'd been missing all those years I was so good at not looking. Not the quiet of nothing happening. The quiet of finally, fully being here. Grant had set out to break me. Instead, he'd shown me exactly how much I could carry, and exactly what I'd never settle for again. And what I chose, clear-eyed, both hands, no strings I didn't tie myself, was this. Real, complicated, honest love with a man who saw all of me and stayed. The end of it, as it turned out, was just where my own life finally began.